Hi, so I want to talk to you today about the seriously destructive habit of if only thinking. Now, this is a type of thinking that we might think is pretty harmless or natural or everybody does it, but there are a handful of reasons why this can be a seriously self-limiting and even self-destructive thinking habit. So I recently did a video on how to feel more joy and less stress during the holidays. And one of the things I mentioned in there was to eliminate if only thinking. And that piece generated a lot of commentary. I get a lot of feedback from people who said, I do this all the time. How do I stop it? So I decided to create this video to address it because I do think that eliminating if only thinking can really help us live with more joy, and it can help us move forward in a way that will improve our lives. So let's think about if only thinking. If only thinking focuses on the solution being something outside of ourselves. If it's something we can control, we might briefly think if only, and then we move forward. So very silly example, but if only I had apples in the house, I would bake a pie. Okay, don't have apples. I could bake a different kind of pie. I could not bake a pie. I could go out and get a pie. I could go out and get apples. But I don't spend a lot of time sitting and ruminating if only, right? It's within my control. So where we're stuck with if only thinking is about things we don't have control over. So at its essence, if only thinking is disempowering. It is disempowering to think over and over about things we don't have power over. If only thinking keeps us actually in sort of a victim position, if we are feeling if only this other person changed their behavior, if only they acted nicer, stopped drinking so much, were able to keep a job, whatever the if only is about another person, we feel like we're a victim of someone else's bad behavior. And if only thinking can also be about some perceived lack in ourselves. So, for example, if only I was good at coding like my brother is. If only I was smarter, prettier, wealthier. If only, all those things feel like they're out of our control. So the essence of if only thinking is disempowering. It's a victim mindset. Even if we're feeling like we are lacking, it's still sort of a victim mindset. Like life is unfair. I wasn't given the same benefits other people have. If only thinking also keeps you stuck, because if you can't do anything to change the situation, if the only change that matters is something that happens in the external world, then you're stuck. You're stuck with the problem. And there's also a form of denial and a lack of humility underneath if only thinking. But I'm going to come back to those two things towards the end of this video as we're talking about solutions. So I'm going to lead you through some steps to change your if only thinking. And we're going to approach this with a series of questions. So these can be great questions to use as a journaling prompt, but really to explore what's at the root of the if only thinking and what do you need to shift to remove it as a habitual pattern. So question number one, what is my desired feeling? When you are thinking if only X, Y, and Z, what is it you want to feel? So I'm going to share a couple of quick examples. Let's say the thinking was, if only I had a better job. Well, okay, if you had the better job, what would you feel? Well, I'd feel more excited about greeting the day. I'd feel more security. Or let's say it's if only I could lose 20 pounds. Well, okay, if you lost 20 pounds, what feeling would you have? Well, then I'd feel good about myself. Or if only this person in my life stopped doing all these destructive things, well, then what feeling are you hoping to have? So my suggestion is you listen through this video, you write these questions down, and then come back and do this with some of your common themes. So what is the desired feeling under your if only? That's question number one. Question number two, is there another way to get that feeling? So for example, when I talk to people who say, well, if I could lose 20 pounds, then I'd feel good about myself. Well, what if you could feel good about yourself as you are right now, here today? And that concept may seem like completely incomprehensible to people. But if you really think about it, we can feel good about ourselves no matter what. Feeling good about ourselves is a state of mind. It is not dependent on how much we weigh, how we look, what job we have. It's truly not. And I think you probably have some examples of this in your own life where, let's say you wanted to lose that 20 pounds, you lost it and you still didn't feel good enough. Or you might have a friend who is in perfect shape who just obsesses about their weight weight and doesn't feel like they look good enough. So it really is not about the external thing we're tying it to, right? And then I've worked with people, both when I worked on Wall Street and then again in my job as a psychotherapist, I worked with people who had these incredible jobs, earning huge amounts of money with lots of status, and they still didn't feel secure. They still felt insecure, at risk of losing it all, at risk of losing people's admiration. They still didn't feel good about themselves. They still didn't feel secure. So flipping this around and say, okay, how can I feel secure now? What is the thinking I would need to do today to feel secure with the situation as it is? And then if we're worried about somebody who is engaged in self-destructive behavior and we think we could stop worrying about them if they stop doing it, well, that's probably not true, because if they stop doing it, you'll worry they'll start again, or you'll start worrying about somebody else. Believe me, I know this. I've done it myself. So what if you can stop worrying now? Because remember, worrying is about things we can't do anything about, so there's no need to do it, right? Productive versus unproductive worry. So coming back, first question is, what desired feeling is under that if only? Second question, is there another way I can get to that desired feeling? In fact, can I get to that desired feeling right now with everything exactly as it is? And then that leads us to question number 3. What can I do about it? What can I put in place to move myself towards that desired feeling? That's the empowerment here. That's the I can change things for myself. I can change how I react to things. I can change how I respond. And then the fourth question to contemplate is, what is it about right now that's awesome? What can I appreciate about things exactly as they are? Or even better, can I just mindfully bring myself back to the present moment now? Now, obviously, appreciating things about the present moment makes it more pleasurable, but no matter what, we can always just bring things back to now. And that gets us out of that if only thinking. We can bring our mind to our senses, to what we hear, what we smell, what we see, what we feel right now, this moment, right here, letting ourselves feel whatever we might feel. So those are a series of questions to contemplate. And I want to come back now to those 2 things I mentioned earlier, because if you still feel stuck, if you still can't move away from the if only thinking, having thought through these 4 things, there are 2 things in your way: denial and lack of humility. I'm going to tackle lack of humility first. No, let's do denial first. I don't know. They're both so good. They're both tough topics. And I also want to say here, I work a lot with this concept of our negative core beliefs. So if you've been watching my channel for a while, you're very familiar with that concept. And if you're new, I do have a number of videos about how those core beliefs really get in our way. And I do have a free PDF for those of you who haven't accessed it yet. And the link is below. You can download it, but it's a PDF on transforming your negative core beliefs. And I hear from people very often about how helpful this PDF has been for them, how it has helped them make real change in their lives. There's 3 really practical tools that I share in this video that can help you. So make sure you download that. All right. Coming back to denial. Often, our if onlys are reflective of our denial. We are denying something that is a reality. We might be denying that somebody else will change. We might be denying our lack of power over the situation. Now, accepting powerlessness is not disempowering. Accepting our powerlessness can be empowering as long as we are allocating it correctly, right? We are powerless over other people's addictions, bad habits, bad tempers. We are powerless over those things. Accepting that cuts through our denial and then helps us make better choices. So people often get confused on this because they feel like if they accept their powerlessness in a particular situation, well, then they're disempowering themselves. But that's not true at all, right? If you have a wonderful outing planned and you are like so excited and you're hoping the weather's great and all of this, if you accept the fact that you're powerless over the weather, you'll have a plan B. You might have an alternate date for the activity. You might have an indoor venue for a backup plan. You're powerless over the weather. I'm pretty sure of that one. So that's an easy example because most of us acknowledge that. But accepting our powerlessness over something as easy as the weather empowers us to have a plan B. And we can use that same kind of thinking over another person's bad behavior, over an environment that we really can't impact, that we find toxic. If we can accept that the environment is toxic and then figure out how to protect ourselves within it or how to get out of it, right? It's actually empowering to accept your powerlessness. So denial is when we won't accept our powerlessness. Denial is when we really are not willing to fully acknowledge that there is a major problem and it's outside of our control. So investigate whether denial is underneath your if onlys. And then lastly, this one about lack of humility. When we say, if only XYZ happens, then I'd be happy, they'd be happy, we'd all be happy, we are assuming that we know what's best, that we know what's best for ourselves, and that we know what's best for other people. And I imagine you can think of some examples in your own life where you have felt like this external thing would make you happy, and then you've achieved it and you haven't been happy. Or maybe some major change you were hoping for happens, and yet the result from it isn't what you were planning. So sometimes having a humility about what we think is best can be super helpful. I know in my own life, I've gone for many goals, which once I reach them, I'm like, I'm not sure I want this anymore. Or I felt like if XYZ happened, then everything would be better, and XYZ happens, and then these things get better, but then this kind of gets worse. I've developed a lot of humility in my decades on this planet that I don't always know what's going to be for the best for myself and the people around me. So bringing in a sense of humility, not in terms of like putting yourself down or anything, not like, oh, I'm so humble, I know nothing, but more like, yeah, sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways. And maybe I can kind of get out of the way here and let the universe work. It's magic. I can appreciate that magic, and then I can focus on doing what I have control over. I can focus on doing what I can do. So do me a favor. If you've liked this video, please do give it a like. Comment below. Let me know what you think. I read all the comments. I try to respond to a lot of them. And as you can tell, I made this video because of the comments I received. So when you comment back, you give me ideas to keep producing material that can be helpful for you and others around the world.